So what are the rules? Here are the rules. Number 1, be polite. Whether it's a police officer or a lawyer or a judge, being polite always works. And it's very difficult sometimes because there's going to be tremendous disagreements and a tremendous amount of emotional friction. Try to be polite because in my career, I found it always worked. The second rule is always be polite and be flexible. You're going to have to make some very hard decisions. There are going to be restrictions on liberty. There's going to be things that are not going to go the way you want. You learn to be flexible. The secret is this: being on probation is better than being in jail. The rule number 3 is tell a probation officer what works in your house. Tell them what language that you use. Now, probation officers need compliance. And if probation officers get compliance, they are happy. And a happy, let me just turn the page here, a happy probation officer is a flexible probation officer. A happy probation officer will find you extra services. A happy probation officer makes for success. Rule number 4, and this is the most difficult one. Rule number 4 is model the behavior in your home that you want. If you drink too much, argue, yell and scream, throw things, hit things, break things, drive badly, anything you say to the person with fetal alcohol about correct behavior is a waste of breath. People with fetal alcohol, like other people, are very good at spotting fakes. You need to be congruent. That means what you say and what you do have to be on the same page. And that's not easy to do because some of these people with fetal alcohol really do try our patience, and there's no other way. If you model relationship, you may get what you need. The second thing is, again, we've been talking about it around, let's head it straight ahead. You need a relationship with the probation officer. Within professional boundaries, you need to be able to have very difficult conversations. You need to be on the same team. He needs to be included in the external brain. The probation officer and you need to be on the same page. That doesn't mean you have to be a policeman at home. But what it means is this topic of boundaries and clear language has to come up every day. And in terms of clear language, here's a recommendation that's so obvious it needs to be said out loud. Put the probation order, the guts of the probation order, on the back of your front door. So every day he goes out, he can see the order. Put it on the fridge. Put it on the bathroom mirror. Put it on his bedroom wall. Put it in the truck on the way to work. Find ways to repeat the message with heart, because heart and repetition seems to be the best way to get success. Now I talked earlier about congruent behavior. Remember, the brain of the person with fetal alcohol is missing parts. So if you are incongruent, you're causing the brain confusion. Now, confusion creates problems. So you want everybody to be like on a set of railroad tracks, all going in the same direction. And this congruent means often in your language. You're going to have to be very careful in your language. And one of the things I've learned from Diane Malbin is find a metaphor that you can use. Like, Bob, you're kind of like this race car, but the steering wheel's not working and you need help steering. Bob, you're kind of like this river that's got some real big waterfalls, and in the waterfalls people get hurt. Or find some metaphor, some visual language that may work, and find something that speaks to their experience so it can be repeated as a helpful thing, not so much as a threat. Now, we talked about the external brain. That means the probation officer has to know what specific brain issues, what specific things you've noticed or the doctors have noticed that are a problem, whether they be in attention or learning or reasoning or memory. Make sure that the probation officer knows what specific brain issues have been identified. It makes it so much easier for him if he has some science behind him. It's also helpful to tell the probation officer if there are sensitivities or what his moods are, if there's a mood problem. Make sure everybody knows what prescriptions have been used, and make sure you tell the probation officer, because you know this, what early warning signals you have when there's going to be a bad day, because you want to structure it for success. You want to go for small successes, small successes. There are going to be failures, but stress the positive. And about the positive, Judge Tom Smith has a very good suggestion. Tom's been reading a lot of brain science, which we should all do. And he says the brain science says write the probation orders in a positive voice. If you have a lot of orders that say do not, do not, do not, it's not the same as a positive. And I have a story which I think proves this. There's a very successful probation officer in South Dakota, and she changed an order to say you must be home every night by 7 p.m. That and a few other things in terms of the community, she said, made all the difference. It's a positively worded order. And Judge Smith, like many other people, would say, if you can create a positive order, it works better than a series of negative orders. And the thing about the South Dakota order is it created compliance. And the other thing about the South Dakota order is that it was an order that people in the community could help out with and could remind the person. So what you need to do is find something and reduce it to the back of a business card. Many of the situations are going to be a page or two of probation terms that are required. They still have to be followed. Compliance, compliance, compliance. But find something which is the gist or the guts of the core of the order, and that should be able to put on the back of the probation officer's business card. And I have found that if you can reduce things to its simplest, clearest terms, good things will happen. I've talked about metaphor, and I think that sometimes these people have different kinds of language skills, and appeals to visual images seem to work, and that may be the few cases that I can remember, but I would recommend it. In court, when you're talking about the probation order, talk about how to avoid breaches. Talk about orders that work. Now this means you're going to have to use the language of the home, the kind of language I talk to people when you write notes on the fridge, those little yellow stickies, that kind of language. Clear, simple, direct, positive language. And you want to tell as many people as possible about the probation order. You need as much help as you can get. Everybody on the external brain should have a copy of the order, and the probation officer should know everybody else that's on the external brain committee. And I've said this, I'll say it again, you have to stress success, and there will be failures. Have a plan B. Tell the probation officer there's going to be failures. We're going to have these problems. And then have a plan. Have something in place so that when things go very badly, that the probation officer can understand it in a larger context. And make sure the judge knows that there's going to be failures. That's why some of the resources I've mentioned, if you go through them, there's lots of helpful tips in there to tell the judge, and there's lots of ways to create success. Now, let's talk about failure. Failure is not always bad news. Failure is a good way to say, well, that didn't work. Failure is also an opportunity to try another strategy to create success. So build on small successes, and remember that the biggest connection you have is relationship. It's the emotional bond. It's in the limbic brain. That's when people who like to be with other people are with the person who's in trouble. That's when things happen. And everybody knows these probation officers. They are truly gifts to the system. They're wonderful people. And don't forget that they're overloaded. Okay, we're almost done here. Mostly, I've been talking about repetition with heart. Find ways to create success, and find ways that the probation officer can understand, because he's partly a police officer. He's also working in a pretty rigid system that really doesn't like failure. So this repetition with success is going to be a message that the probation officer is going to have to take in little bites. He's not going to jump into it immediately, but I'm sure that once you have some success, he'll like to have more success. I guess you want to see the probation officer as a human being, as a partner, as a person, not as an adversary. And I know some probation officers are less than perfect, And I believe that a little positive attitude can really be helpful. At the end of the day, I believe if your son wants to stay out of jail, you and your son and the probation officer have to be on the same page, and they have to have a healthy relationship. Thank you.